You're tuning into the Wild, Weird, and Sometimes Normal podcast. If you have a story or a guest recommendation that you think others need to hear, email me at wildweirdandsometimesnormal@gmail.com. Let's get this started. Alex and Brett, kick it!
Wild. Wild. Weird. And sometimes wild. Weird. Wild. Weird. Wild. Weird. Wild. And sometimes normal.
On this episode, I'm joined by Leo Moynihan, a co-author of Unsolved Secrets. We discuss sports scandals, UFOs, the disappearance of flight MH370, and some of the cases he investigated for this book and his others. At the time of the recording, the Titan submarine was still missing, and there was hope that the story would have a happy ending. Unfortunately, it did not, and the occupants on the submarine died shortly after the boat that launched it lost contact. I left the conversation in, as our exchange was respectful to the missing, and we both reiterated that we hoped they would be saved. Additionally, it led to the story written by Morgan Robertson in 1898 about a ship named the Titan that hit an iceberg and sank in the North Atlantic Ocean. Very weird stuff that the Titanic disaster was foretold 14 years before it happened, and then the submersible lost was named the Titan. It gives all three stories a Final Destination feel. You can't escape when fate has plans for you. Leo relayed a story about during World War II, how there was a rumor that Edward VIII may have tried to reach a peace deal with Germany during the war. I followed up his story with a similar one, but had some of the pieces backwards. My story involved a high-ranking German, Rudolf Hess, and how he failed to reach Scotland to negotiate an English surrender. He was kept as a prisoner of war, and after the Nuremberg trials, he was sent to prison. When everyone was freed or died in that prison, he was the lone prisoner for over 20 years in there. A very intriguing story that I'm sure all of the facts have not seen the light of day. That story, an article on Boyan Slat and his ocean cleanup, and a few articles on solo geoengineering, aka chemtrails, are in the show notes. I used links to Times, Forbes, CNBC, and a few others. I know, the mainstream media is the enemy of the people. But hey, if Time magazine wants to write an article on billionaires like Bill Gates and George Soros funding programs to spray the skies with chemicals, it makes everyone who talks about chemtrails come off as credible because of sites like this publishing those stories. Anyway, give Leo a follow. I've also included his co-author, Sam Pilger, in the links. Sam couldn't make it, but I hope when we have Leo back on to talk about his new book, Sam can join. Give the guys a follow and pick up their books and let them know you heard them on Wild and Weird. Enjoy the show. Are you looking for CBD for your pet? My friends at Pure Pet Wellness have what you need. They use the highest quality ingredients. While other companies may use synthetic oils in their CBD, Pure Pet Wellness uses organic ingredients. Organically grown hemp, organic coconut oil, organic shea butter, organic beeswax, and that's just to name a few. A family-owned and operated company that also offers fast shipping. Go to purepetwellness.com for all your pet's CBD needs and use the discount code WILD and WEIRD at checkout. That's WILD, A-N-D, WEIRD. Treat your animal right. Go to purepetwellness.com. Are you looking to buy a home in New Jersey? Escape the city and move to the suburbs? Finally purchase a vacation home on the lake or down the shore? Maybe you're one of the lucky ones who are retiring and moving out of state. If so, let me help you. Keller Williams and the Real Estate Professional Group have what you need to make your goals come true. Reach out and have a conversation with someone who will put you first. Contact Brian McCoach at 856-321-1212 or email brianmccoach@kw.com. Welcome to another episode of Wild, Weird, and Sometimes Normal. I'm your host, Brian. And today my guest is Leo Moynihan, the author of Unsolved Secrets. Welcome, Leo.
Hello, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you so much. We had such a juggling process to get this down. Leo's across the pond in the UK, and I'm over here in the US. It is bright and sunny where he is. It looks like, we have a nice little lunch spread.
When it's sunny in London, we have to go on about it for at least 2 minutes. It's the law. It's the law.
Perfect. I love it.
Soon I'll be very British and say it's too hot.
All right, so that's actually a good question. What when you'll see that the heat wave in London and all this stuff like that. What is too hot? What is a typical too hot?
Well, last summer it got up to 40, which is too hot for any city, I think. But it's okay if it's a city like Seville, but London isn't built for those sort of temperatures. So at the moment we're looking at it's been touching 30, but it's been quite cool at night, which I can handle. It's just last summer was tricky because it was about 28 degrees at night.
Yeah, that's the problem. If the heat and humidity stick around at night, and then you're not getting that relief. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do some calculations on the back of a napkin later and convert this to Fahrenheit.
Oh God, sorry. Yes.
30 and
40 must be about 110 or something like that.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
Or 100, I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's fine. You're doing Celsius. I'm doing Fahrenheit. They do this to confuse us. We can't communicate.
Potato, huh?
Yeah.
Tomato, all that stuff. Yeah.
Leo, what got you interested in secrets besides that they're fun? And, it seems like all kids enjoy secrets.
Yeah.
What is it
okay. A bit of housekeeping first. I am the co-author of the book. I have a co-author named Sam Pilger who sadly can't join us today. So Sam and I are old friends, and we were actually both sports writers. So there's a very strange sort of angle into all of this. We met writing about football on a magazine 20 odd years ago. And then a company, before the pandemic, a company approached us called Quarto Publishers, and they were looking to do some books on the weird and wonderful. So it's good for the title of your podcast. And we've done a range of books from, as you say, we did Enigmas, or I did Enigmas, I think. And we've co-authored a few, but I've also done books on conspiracy theories, which really sort of, during the pandemic, I wrote a book about conspiracy theories, which felt very much on topic with vaccines and the whole, is it a hoax sort of stuff. So and then we've done serial killers and murderers, so quite macabre, dark stuff that there seems to be a big market for, and people have always been fascinated in these things. And last year we did a book called Secrets together, which ranges from political secrets, wartime secrets. We actually, being sports writers, insisted on a chapter on sporting secrets. So that was very interesting to us. And when you open up these things and start researching things that you thought you knew about, it really is an eye opener.
So I love sports. Probably tied for one of my favorite things. What are some of the big sports secrets that you found?
Well, let me tell you. Well, I mean, just open that. One eye that springs to mind for me is whether or not Sonny Liston, through his fights against Muhammad Ali or Cassius Clay, as he was in the first fight. Then we had the Black Sox scandal, which you'll know about back in the day. Oh, yeah. Was Tonya Harding behind the attack on Nancy Kerrigan? There was a wonderful story that I did about the Colombian soccer star Andre Escobar, who was killed when he got home from the World Cup in the United States in 1994. And it was about who actually killed him. It's an incredible story that Colombia had this great team going into the World Cup in 94. And they wondered if they might even win it. They were that good. But everything went very wrong on the field when they got there, and they ended up losing to the USA. And Andre Escobar, who was their captain and pretty much their kind of superstar back home, a wonderful guy, apparently, very sort of anti all the drug cartels that were going and quite vociferous about it. He scored an own goal that pretty much knocked out Colombia from the World Cup. And on getting home, there'd been lots of kidnapping threats against the team, and it was a very dangerous time for the team. And when they got home, Escobar went out to a nightclub and was shot dead in the car park. And whilst the official story was it was just he had an argument with someone, it was a random, it turned out that it was probably due to a drug cartel annoyed that they'd lost money that they'd bet on the team. And Pablo Escobar had recently died, and there was talk that Pablo Escobar probably wouldn't have allowed such a hit to happen if he'd still been there. So you're really meshing two dark worlds there, and it kind of, a lot of these sporting secrets come from things like that, I think, because I mentioned Sonny Liston, and that was obviously all mafia led. All the rumors were that he was asked to throw the fight. And it's fascinating that such an incredible career as Muhammad Ali's starts from such murky waters.
that's interesting. Even the boxing now, and it seems that the big fights are not as they were like in the 90s. So it's kind of more like the UFC. But if you get off to a rough start in the UFC, you might not be fighting for a championship for a long time if like your story's not matching up to a Dana White storyline that he wants. So for Muhammad Ali to start off on such a streak, and then that's putting you in a position to keep battling for championships. If Sonny Liston wasn't in it for the money, or the mafia wasn't involved to twist his arm, whatever it might have been, it could have been a different career path. Yeah, very interesting.
I think these secrets prevail today in a different way. I mean, boxing is an interesting one. The heavyweight division is so divides opinion because there's clearly a lot of talent at the top there, but they just don't fight each other. And what we hear from promoters is one thing, but I'm sure behind the scenes there are secrets, and it's all about money, obviously, and people just won't fight each other. Some boxers want to keep their legacy, and they're afraid to lose, which I think is totally unsporting and goes against everything that it should be. In Ali's day, they just full fought each other, maybe twice a year, but now you don't get to see a fight. When was the last heavyweight title fight? I couldn't tell you. So these secrets are still there. FIFA, the governing body of soccer and football, the lid's been lifted off FIFA recently, and it's a terrible load of worms down there, isn't it? Corruption, money, Qatar getting the World Cup, Russia getting the World Cup before that. It's an open secret now that it was all bribery. Sport really has to clear up its act. If you look at cycling, again, a modern phenomena, the drug taking, Lance Armstrong, it's all sport is meant to be the sport's meant to be the most integral, honest thing, isn't it? Otherwise, there is no sport. There's no point watching it unless you want to watch WWE. What wrestling is.
At least they're telling you it's not real.
Exactly. It's theatre, right? And people buy into it. But the rest of sport has to be above board, because then you can't buy into the drama that only sport creates. So that's interesting that it goes on today as well.
Yeah, that's tough. And I'm sure that, the common thread that you found throughout your books of secrets and enigmas, conspiracy theories, et cetera, it's always money. It always comes down to money. Like everything is, we didn't tell anyone about this because there's money to be made, or we could have done this because there's money to be made. And it's a shame.
Money and power, which sort of allude to the same thing. A lot of the book is political secrets, whilst money is always involved. It comes to power, doesn't it? One of the ones I thought I knew a little bit about was the Watergate scandal, and that probably the godfather of political secrets. And it really rocked your country, didn't it? And it kind of rocked the world.
Oh, yeah. And now you see what happened in the 70s for that compared to some of the things that are alleged today or coming out today. And it kind of seems like you broke into a hotel and got some papers and we're blaming on somebody. Okay. That's normal. That's a Tuesday here now.
If it happens, you're totally right. If it happened today, it would be a little story and someone would just admit to it straight away and go, yeah, and then we'll carry on. Yeah. Incredible. Isn't it?
You caught me. It's okay. That's fine. Yeah. And then turn it into a political donation email. It's amazing.
Well, imagine if the term fake news had been around. Nixon would have loved it.
It would have been great for him. It's a shame that, our attention span is such like this Twitterverse of, if it's not like the most recent tweet, if it wasn't just in your feed 5 seconds ago, if it's not on social media and people pushing it, it just moves on. There are stories that come out that would have been weeks to months long scandals that are now just like 10 minutes. And people go, oh, no, I missed it. Sorry. Yeah. Well, if you think of the space that the Washington Post gave to it, and the two great journalists, Woodward and Bernstein, you're right. If there'd been Twitter, there probably would have been an afternoon's furore about it, and then the next terrible thing would have happened. Yeah, Nixon would have dumped it on a Friday afternoon. It would have been out of the news cycle immediately, and then on Monday it just went back to normal. It is crazy.
I mean, when we talk about it out loud, it's actually terrifying. And people seeking power through secrets and through deception have got it their way, haven't they?
And that's so circling back to sports, everybody's in. I don't know so I'll see some things on UK politics a little bit, and you guys have a different system than we do. And actually, some of your system's amazing. Just screaming at each other in your I don't know what the house is called that they're in, but they're
House of Commons. Yeah,
House of Commons. I'm sorry. They're screaming at each other in the House of Commons, and it's amazing. It's like, this is great. We should get into this. Just everybody yelling at each other, and you really get a point out. And over here, everything is really tribalized. You're on one side or the other, almost down for everything, and it's really exhausting. So getting into sports, at night, turn on the baseball game or whatever it might be and just try to escape from it. And now in the back of my head, I'm like, who was bought off today? Why is this happening? But it gets to be very difficult.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to be so careful, sport, because as I say, without honesty and truth and legitimacy, then it will cease to be. So I think sport has to be very careful, and we're all worried about sports washing now, and the huge Middle Eastern states legitimizing themselves through sport. And in fact, it's quite brazen. I might hasten to add that it might not even be a secret the way they do it these days. They're just buying what they want, and however dodgy the regime, are making themselves look legitimate through sport and buying football clubs in England, and they getting the World Cup through bribery. It's again, it just seems the norm, which I really worry about.
Right. I don't know all the full details of the Live Goth.
Yes.
Phil Mickelson and those guys were on, but they were demonized, that, you're going to go take, money from a certain group, and how dare you do that? And, Phil Mickelson got hundreds of millions of dollars. There was $800 million on the table for Tiger Woods, and no. And then the PGA is sitting here like, how dare you, go for a group with that? Now they merge together. PGA is still a little bitter about it, but it seems like those guys lost out on a ton of money.
And they are they're not bitter about it. That's the thing.
The PGA?
Yeah, I would argue they're not bitter about it. I would argue that it's not even a merger. I'd argue that the PGA have been taken over by the Saudis.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I see it. I think they pretend it's a merger and like, let's all come together for the good of the game. Actually, the PGA thought, if we can't beat them, join them, and we'll just get taken over too.
No, that's good insight. But because that's true.
Well, yeah.
Well, I think that's good insight, because they talked about that with this new deal, that the PGA players who did not jump over, they're going to get this extra cut. And if I was a Live player, I'd be like, well, what? This isn't 50-50. Like, if we're merging, why am I giving a part of my pie?
What is it? So just to catch up with what they missed out on.
Right. Yeah, you guys should have been there before. Like, can I get Bitcoin at 10 cents? Can I get in on Bitcoin at the ground prices that I missed? I got to talk to somebody over here. This is crazy.
I'm sure there's a sheikh somewhere that will listen to your cries.
I'm going to see if I can get them on the podcast, see if they can turn back time for me. Hey, who knows? The multiverse, the Spider-Verse, all these things that they're getting into our consciousness. There's somewhere I can get to.
Yeah. I mean, jokes aside, it's a concern. I think real concern. Politics. We probably all decided that yes, there will be secrets. Sometimes there has to be secrets in politics. That's the way of the world. We had a chapter on war as well. Clearly, you need big secrets in war, because you're trying to. A lot of a war will be won not on the battlefield. Sport just cannot go down that road, and it's very concerning. I think it's if you start watching a game thinking, is this legit? Is it being rigged? Is it in boxing and things? It's gone on for years, as we said. Goes back centuries. It's quite easy to rig a boxing match, but when things are rigged, not just someone cheating on the pitch, but it's rigged off the field, that people, clubs or franchises or whoever they are allowed to buy players unfairly. If their finances are rigged, then that's a very, very distressful situation.
Because you're expecting either two people or two teams being created either through talent or a draft or whatever it might be, and then you're putting up your best 1 through 5 or 11, whatever you might have, and then you're going to battle each other. And whoever comes out of that was the best for the day, was the best for the season, whatever it might be. And now if people are getting bought, the corruption, or how was that money there? If the payroll can't be made, and then the players are anxious of, hey, at the end of this, is my check even clearing? That's not a fair and level playing ground. Which, hey, that's in life, that's fine. But sports isn't supposed to be about the nitty gritty of life. It's supposed to be where everybody goes and measures their talent.
Yeah. And you always, I'll use English football as an example because that's what I'm in, but you're always going to have richer clubs and bigger clubs because there's a history and there's a bigger fan base. Success has created wealth. I get that. But when a whole nation like Saudi Arabia can come to England and buy a club and then use its own wealth as terms of sponsorship, there's a club, Manchester City in England, who have recently won a very famous treble, which means they won the league, the Premier League, the FA Cup, and also Europeans Champions League. And it's only the second time it's ever happened in England. The argument is it fair because they were bought 12, 15 years ago by a Middle Eastern nation? their sponsorship deals. They've been charged with 115 offences of possible financial irregularity. So they have the best lawyers, so they can tie that all up in knots. I'm not blaming Manchester City fans for being happy about their win. Of course, they're an old, good, great club with a great history. But if there are 115 charges against you, you have to worry about how we see that victory.
That seems like it's setting a record on their own. Like they're winning that sport of how many charges are filed against them.
Yeah.
You get under 10 and you
Yeah.
get under 10 and people believe it. And they're like, oh yeah, there's probably definitely something there. Then 115, they're like, hey, you're just going after them unfairly. So if you're going to go big, like go all the way.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, if they're
crazy.
not guilty on every account, that'd be quite incredible, wouldn't it?
Right. Hey, it's all fake news. Fake news. You know,
Fake news. Fake news. Fake news. Yep.
So there was in the news, I don't know if you paid attention to this or not, it seems like it was just a big story the last couple of days. There was this submersible that was going to the Titanic that was filled with 5 people, I believe, with billionaires. So I just got up a little bit ago, so I didn't see the news if anything happened overnight. But they air for 96 hours. I think they went missing on Sunday, so we're coming up on that 96-hour part.
I think I've heard they've got till Thursday morning.
Okay, so they have till Thursday morning.
As we're recording, that's what, 24 hours.
Yeah, so they have about 24 more hours.
So I'll fill you in. I mean, by the time this goes out, we'll know what's happened. But they've heard that through their sonar, they've heard a banging noise down there, which suggests someone's alive.
Oh, that's amazing. That's good.
Yes. Where it is, they don't know. Where the problem being where the submarine is, I guess. Because of course the Titanic the actual Titanic disaster was quite shrouded in secrecy at the time, and and again, power. Look, the search for power. The company that built it wanted it to be the quickest, wanted to break records, and because they were going so fast, there was an argument that that's what brought their downfall. And then it was slightly covered up, the amount of people that died. So all these things come back to us, don't they?
They definitely do. And you did conspiracy theories too. So this is very interesting. Yes. So I saw a map of how far off from New York, off the East Coast of the United States, the Titanic was. And mentally, I didn't realize it was that close. Like they came really close.
Yeah, I said that last night to my mum. I said, look, I did. Yeah, it was really, I think they were motoring through the night to get into New York for the morning before lunch.
Yeah. So if there were icebergs, if you gave me a blank map of the Atlantic Ocean, was like, oh, put where the Titanic was and how far icebergs come down, I would have been way off. Like that was almost directly east of New York, just slightly north.
I think it's about 900 miles, which is nautical. That's probably not, I think about 900 miles. Yeah. So, yeah. And it was April. So listen, I don't know. Yeah, it was April as well.
Yeah. I know nothing about any of this stuff, but next time I'm going in the Atlantic Ocean off the Jersey Shore, like I'm keeping an eye out for an iceberg. Like they're coming down pretty far now. This is crazy. So they're off
climate change back then, you see. Right?
Yeah. So anyway, so this company owning the submarine, their name is OceanGate. Yeah. Every scandal in the world ends in gate. I would not get into a submarine name. That is just ripe. It's an OceanGate gate. I don't,
No, there's now going to be, when they investigate all this, it would have to be called OceanGate Gate. Yeah.
Right. You have to have a double one on there. But in the 1800s, a book was written, and the book of the name was The Titan, and it mirrored the Titanic of what happened in reality 30 years later, 30 years later. Yes. Wow. So it was this fiction book, and the Titanic ship in this book was called the Titan. And then Titanic, you take away some letters, it is Titan. And this submersible's name is Titan. Who is doing any of this research or naming anything?
Well, who gets into anything called that starts TIT?
Not happening.
You'd have to be a tit to do so.
Yeah. So unfortunately for these people, this is all, I guess when it gets down to it, I'm not this great adventurer of, hey, do you want to drop down, 2,000 feet, whatever it is, 2,000 meters under the ocean? Everything's trying to get so in the ocean, everything gets crushed. In space, everything explodes, I think, right? So everything on the ocean is trying to crush in on you. I saw this video of a paper cup getting taken down to the Titanic, and just what it did. It is crazy. So hopefully this mystery of how the submersible got lost gets solved in a great way. It's good to hear that there was banging, but definitely when this goes out, we'll have an answer for it.
But did you the guy the CEO of the company who's actually on board at the moment, the guy who built the thing and everything, there was the BBC in England, the British Broadcasting Corporation, did a video with him last year, and he described how he made it, and it was so laissez-faire, so relaxed. I mean, the steer is one button on the whole thing, and the steering is, he said, like a Sony PlayStation joystick, basically.
Right, like a controller, yeah. So I saw them holding it up, and at first I thought that was the dumbest thing in the whole world. I was like, my God, man, like these things are. But then I was like, also, what's the training for people? You're like, oh, just do like the old Nintendo. Oh, just put in the Contra code. And yeah, no, I know that's fine. I can handle this.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least the CEO is on there. So I saw some things that there's possibly safety standards that they missed. That there was a window for them to look out at the Titanic. You're going down and everyone's sitting. Right. So like almost think like college dorm bunk beds, and then like you're hanging out with a bunch of people. So like everyone's just sitting, one's facing one way and the feet are next to you. And there's not a lot of this room going on here. So there's a little window that you can see out. And it was something like they had it certified to 1,400 meters, but it's really going down to 2,000 meters, and they didn't pay the extra money to get it certified for down there. And as a billionaire, I understand not all billionaires are smart. You were smart enough to make your money. I would think that maybe you would look at the certification or things of that nature to be like, hey, this is safe, right? And not the guy like, oh, hey, I just built this. It's a PlayStation controller. Get on. I'll jump on with you. It never ends great. So, I hope this one does, but that's very,
I wish them all well. I don't want to, I wish them all well, of course. And there's one of their sons is with them who's a teenager. So I wish them all well. But there's just a slight arrogance around wanting to tell people that you've seen this shipwreck. And I'm sure the visibility is so low that really, what do you see? And I'm sure they're taking, it's to say you've done it. And it's not, I don't know if it's enhancing anything. They all spent 250 grand each. I could just see all that money going somewhere better. And, it's a bit, as I say, I just hope they're all okay.
No, definitely. And they had, when James Cameron was filming the Titanic, he went down there, and similar things, but they also had these giant spotlights. So you could, as they were doing this tour and, the extra 50 hours of Titanic footage that they put on there, which was actually, was really amazing if you're interested. But this guy had, $1 billion production company budget behind it, not this little flashlight in front of you. And then you're looking at the resting place of these people who went down. But again, all of this is, we hope everything turns out for these people. But when I saw that go missing, it reminded me of the flight MH370, the plane that for the most part just disappeared. And the Malaysian plane.
Yeah, that's still it remains a big secret, doesn't it? There was a good Netflix series about it. Another one of these things, probably very possibly Russian linked. That again, will we ever know? And more importantly, actually, will the relatives of those who were on it ever know? I think that's the key. We write these books. It's all slightly titillating, and we all like to know the historical and political and war and scandal. A lot of it is scandal, but we must remember that when things like that plane incident happened, that people lost loved ones, and they're sitting around not knowing. Imagine.
No, yeah, that's the horrible part of it.
Yeah,
that we're interested from a historical or strange aspect of it, and then they're wondering, as a loved one.
Yeah.
So when that incident happened, though, another thing I found fascinating was just how little of the ocean is explored. I understand under the ocean, they say that we haven't explored 90% of under the ocean, but just like the Indian Ocean in general, that there's just shipping lanes for the most part, and so like shipping highways, and everything else is now just unexplored territory on it.
Yeah.
So the days of Amelia Earhart just taking off and flying, like, oh, there's an island. Like, that's over. If it wasn't found within the last 100 years, there could just be islands sitting out there. No idea. Parts of the ocean. Oh, sorry, you're not in a shipping lane. You're not going to be found. Tom Hanks, you and Wilson, man, not happening, not being found. Get back on the island. It's crazy.
I love the idea that we're not as clever as we think we are. I think that's quite important to. The human race needs to stay humble because they're just not. We're just not, and we're not as clever as we think. We've put people on the moon and we've landed things on Mars, but there's things on our own doorstep that we have very little idea about. And I was listening to someone on the radio this morning talking about the submarine incident, and from an engineering point of view, it's so much easier to go up into space than it is to explore the deep parts of our oceans. In terms of dealing with the pressure down there is much harder from an engineering point of view, and building things that work down there. and it's much easier to go up into space and do stuff because it's a vacuum up there rather than pressure. So I like the idea that there's places and there's things that we don't know about. I think it's important because if we did know about it all, we'd only go and, excuse my French, F it up.
That's definitely true. That is 100% right. Is the UK caught up in this, alien UFO phenomenon that's really taken over the last couple of years?
Well, I did one of these series of these books I did was the paranormal. So obviously did a lot on aliens. I wouldn't say it's a constant sort of people will say they're interested. I think in America, when I did this book, seems to be the hotbed of it. Or there's regions of England that are very sort of, people think there's a place in Suffolk where people do believe there's very sort of strong links to extraterrestrials, but it's not on everyone's lips. No.
Okay.
Tell me about what's happening. Tell me what any new outcomes are being out over in your neck of the woods.
So last week there was this whistleblower that worked for the Pentagon.
Yes, I did read about this.
Yeah,
yes.
So he came out and he's saying that, so the Whistleblower Act, you can come out and if things are either being hid from, so their oversight is Congress, and
yes,
things are being hid from Congress. So he's coming out on the Whistleblower Act. And within that, he is saying that there is a top secret group that is investigating, they call them UAPs, UFOs, unidentified aerial phenomena, UFOs, that's what they are, people, flying saucers. So they're investigating flying saucers, and they have recovered partial and fully intact UFOs. Some of them look like, they said they like abandoned, like possibly, the alien landed and walked off and left it there. So that's interesting. And then the reporter was talking to him. He's like, so if you have crafts, he's like, you have aliens? And the guy pauses for a second. He's like, oh, well, yeah, we have pilots. So he said that they have the pilots of the UFOs in their possession. He didn't say if they were dead or alive or not. They have crafts. Another report came out. They had somewhere around 12. And that, so he's talking about interdimensional, that they possibly, that they might not be from far away from space as you think, and it could be more of a interdimensional incident. And that so he asked if the aliens, should people be afraid of it? And has there ever been an instance where a UFO hurt a human? And at first he went back and forth a little bit on it. And then he said, yes, that, their humans have been hurt by UFOs. So that came out. Humans have been hurt, possibly killed. The guy was alluding to it. The whistleblower was, you can come out and say so much stuff. And then you're like, well, hold on, I have a non-disclosure. I can't do that. I'm like, I'm sure your non-disclosure says you can't talk about that. We recovered 12 crafts, yet here you are. So at first, as a UFO enthusiast since like a little kid, this is great. Like we're finally getting, it used to be deny, and now it's coming out. I'm like, no, it's true. And I took a step back and I was like, hold on. If they've lied for so many years, why are they coming out now? Like, what is in it for them to twist and say this? So, that's my cynical part of me, that it's going to take a UFO to land in my front yard and bar a cup of sugar.
I think you have to be cynical about everything, don't you? Just to get to the truth. And UFOs have always grabbed people's attention. I mean, what's been the response to this guy? Have the powers that be, have they had a right to apply?
So they're going to have a hearing. The Pentagon came out and said that the group that he's talking about does not exist. But his whole point was there's a group above the Pentagon that is so secret and clandestine and like this like permanent state. And then, and they're giving their technology off to private companies to do their research and their reverse engineering. So this way people within the government wouldn't know about it. And then if there was a FOIA request, it wouldn't hit for that, because now you're talking about private companies' trade secrets, and those aren't open to FOIAs. So things that have been heard a lot in the UFO community, he's saying, and apparently he's supposed to go in front of Congress and things like that and have this, I don't know if it's a closed door hearing or an open door hearing.
Right.
I think they're interested in the technology and then possibly the mismanagement of funds, because this is supposed to be a giant program that's sucking it in. And then you go back, through history, and they talk about, to change a bulb and it's $10,000. And it's like, well, what's your $10,000 wrench doing? I said, well, $9,800 of those dollars went to this Black Ops program, but that's how they funnel the money through.
Oh, well, I think as an observer from far away, if they do discover crafts and aliens and little green men, it still won't be as weird as your current political setup.
it is very tough sometimes, and for both sides, it's really tough because both sides thinks they're so right and thinks they're in the know and thinks whatever news station they're watching is telling them 100%.
Against them,
yeah. And then the other side, all they do is lie, and people will be a lot better once they realize that both sides lie, that both sides barely differ at all,
and always have.
Right. Yeah.
And always have. Yeah.
Their main priority is to gain power and to enrich their families while their short little period or long period, depending who you are, that you're in power. And then when they're out, they're going to get book publishing deals or college gigs that they don't show up to. And, why everyone else, for the most part, either continues to live their life or, struggle a little bit here or there. It's crazy.
Yeah. That it's quest crazy. For power. I mean, I joke about your system, but British politics is equally as crazy at the moment with similar sort of rogue individuals running around. But it's always struck me that these people that are in politics, as soon as they come out of it, they become quite interesting, decent people that you want to listen to. And without the restraints of vote winning and power, they're clearly quite intelligent, good people, and you just wish they could just be those people when they're in power. It's very frustrating.
That's what you hope for. Trump, feel however way you want about him. The one good thing about him was that when he was campaigning and then he said he was going to do X, Y, and Z, and then he got in office and, he did X. He's like, hey, I told you I was going to do X. I did X. A lot of politicians can't point back and said, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Here's my X that I did. Here's my Y. They go, oh, well, I did A. Like, you didn't campaign on A. I didn't vote for you on A. Well, it's kind of like Z, except it's complete opposite. And you're like, well, that's still not what it really should be.
Accountability it all comes back to secrets, doesn't it? Accountability is a very hard thing to have or to enforce.
You're stuck. I mean, once they're in office, whoever it is, I mean, there can be recall elections. There's all these things, but you're going to have whatever party it is going to rally and like, they're trying to remove my guy. And then everybody just votes, no matter how people on elections, dead people have won. Like, how do you vote for a dead person? But like, oh, I didn't realize he was dead. Like, okay, well then don't vote. Like, if you've truly paid like that little attention, it's not, it's not up to the presidential, but like somewhere like the mayor elections, there've been dead people who have won. It's like, okay, good job, guys.
Yeah. No, it's a scary thing. A scary thing.
So when you were doing the research for your books, did you ever solve any of them? Did you get down there and be like, oh, I think this is like the closest that we can to get down there? And what was your favorite one that you came across?
Let's remember that we weren't able to get a lot of them have been solved. Things like Watergate, they got to the bottom of, they found, I say get to the bottom of it as much as you can. So our research was very much around, we were on a tight deadline, so a lot of it is using the internet was our friend. It's very like using old art and getting into it that way. And so many and great documentaries being made on these things. And so it was a case of sort of finding out what has come out of each one. One that comes to my mind just talking then is a British secret that involved the royal family and the Second World War and the Duke of Windsor. I don't know if you're aware of the Duke of Windsor, who was the king before the war, but abdicated because he was in love with a divorced American woman. Do you know this story?
I watched The Crown. I am caught up on British history. Yeah.
There you go. That's the only way to do it these days.
Yeah.
And then obviously he abdicated and was exiled in quite a lot of shame. But then what came out after the war, and I think there is an episode in The Crown about this, after the war, that the American soldiers in Germany found a load of, they called them the Windsor Files, and it was a lot about how the Nazis and the Duke had conspired to maybe get him back in power should Germany win the war, and use his influence prior to the war to help to appease Hitler and try and basically help Hitler along. Winston Churchill was onto it and wouldn't have it, but the idea that a British ex-monarch was in cahoots with Hitler and the Nazis fascinated me. That eventually did come out. So all these things do come out, we hope, in the wash as much as they can eventually, but it takes time.
I'm going to repeat a story, and then I don't have all the names on it, but there was, to this story, similar to this story, related to it, during World War II, I believe it was somebody from England was flying over to Germany, put together this deal of, kind of like a peaceful merger, surrender, whatever it might be. London was getting demolished. And this guy's plane was shot down on the way there, and I believe the UK recaptured him. He was the only person held in a prison and ended up being for like 15 years, even after the war, that he was kept as the only person in the prison. So it lends a lot of credence to the story that this was going to happen. The entire prison was closed off except for this one person. It makes it very strange.
Yeah. As I said, I think I said earlier that wartime secrets are great because, great flippantly, but you have to have secrets, don't you? And you excuse them. And one being the Manhattan Project. We did a chapter on the Manhattan Project in our book, which in regards to the Allies, but America developing a nuclear weapon, and the fundamental importance of keeping all those, and with spies everywhere, keeping those plans and everything they were doing in such a massive project, the Manhattan Project, as it was called, keeping all the details away from the Nazis. Because if Hitler had got his hands on a nuclear weapon, then, you know, I mean, we can argue. I've actually been to Hiroshima in Japan, and the idea that someone could do that to anyone baffles and hurts me in equal measure. But some argue that they had to happen to stop the war. So that's in a whole other argument. But when a secret has to be kept so tightly, and it is kept so tightly, that's incredible to me, because the human race, there's so many, there's so many voices, and as I say, spies are everywhere. But the Allies managed to do it, and as I say, it ended the war. But even if it was in the most callous and crude way.
Right. Their justification was, those lives then saved how many more on the back end.
For me, as I say, I've been to Hiroshima, and it's one of the most moving places I've been to. It's also a very vibrant young city, because it has to be, right? There's a baseball ground. Baseball's huge in Japan, and Hiroshima's baseball ground is right next epicenter of the bomb where they aimed. So it struck me that America gave them this, and then America gave them that. For them to drop a bomb on Hiroshima, and then without warning, also, I think without warning was the worst bit, because kids were walking to school, and then 3 days later do it again in Nagasaki. I think that slightly dampens the argument that we had to do it to end the war. This was just a let's blitz it and show them that there's no way back. Where I think they still could have used it, but warned people and said, look, this is what we've got. And if you don't end the war, then we'll use it in the callous way they ended up doing so, Right.
Maybe you could have released the video, the Bikini Island videos that they were testing, and showed it and say, hey, like we have this.
Yeah.
And do you want to keep going down that road?
My big argument with that, Brian, is I think that what the Americans were doing with all the secrecy and then using it in such a obvious way is showing Stalin what they had, knowing that there was another war coming that was going to the Cold War afterwards was all about secrets and lies, wasn't it? And I think to show two big public displays of US power was kind of the first shots. It was the last shots fired in one war, but the first shots fired in a Cold War.
Right. Why is there always another war looming? You put that in the history book. There's is that? Oh, okay, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's a little guess. Money, war pays, doesn't it? So, if we all sat around and sang Kumbaya, then people wouldn't get rich, and that's very cynical of me, I know, but there you go.
A lot of it seems to come back to that. I believe under Obama's presidency, they ran out of bombs at some point. They were bombing, and they had to then start again. And the Raytheons and the people of that nature seem to love it as those government contracts come in. I'm like, oh, great, print more bombs, let's go, or make more.
The defense budget. I've heard somewhere that America's running out of ammunition to give to Ukraine. You might tell me a strange figure what the Americans spend on defense, but it's got to be. I think there's probably a number above $1 trillion. I don't know.
I don't know the exact number. I know it's huge. I saw yesterday there was an accounting error for the money that the U.S. was giving to Ukraine. I guess they misidentified $6.8 billion. They undervalued the weapons being sent to Ukraine at $6.8 billion. So Ukraine's getting more weapons. And
that's a couple of planes, isn't it?
That is, they said, the equivalent to Mexico's military budget. Now, I don't know the last time Mexico was involved in a big war, but they're doing their military budget. Give me $6.8 billion. I can do a lot with it. Just seems very strange. It's always amazing how accounting errors, go in.
Well, if we're talking secrets, Brian, I think government accounting is let's not let's not even go under that iceberg because,
once you start learning about quantitative easing, and you're like, wait, you just erase these things? Like, I need to start doing that on my checkbook. I'm like, all right, well, mortgage, yeah, erase that. That's gone. Yep, house is mine now. It's fine. It is, it's tough.
The feeling we're being conned.
Hey, just a little bit. It seems that the story's always the same, and it's just the people that change in it.
Well, you know what? In our book, we go back to things like the Trojan horse. It might be part of Greek mythology, but some historians argue that it did happen during the Trojan War. The building of this horse that was called a gift, and they pulled this huge wooden horse into the city of Troy that had been under siege for years, and it was full of Greek soldiers. So these military secrets have been used to the benefit of powerful people since day dot, I guess.
Yeah, and they see it work there. I don't think people are that clever enough, especially people in power, to come up with new ideas. So they just tweak the old ones and just keep doing this.
Oh, exactly. We're all given a Trojan horse. We're all given Saturday night TV to watch, and then people come in and ruin your lives without you knowing it.
Yeah, that's the tough part. Your paycheck on Friday, you're down there at the pub or whatever, and just to get through to Monday, and they're so happy to keep you in that rat race, that cycle. It is.
Well, I think George Orwell, with his very secretive, great novel 1984, said that if just give them beer and football, and they'll be okay. And it's that. And it used to be gin in Victorian London. The powers that be made sure the streets of London were full of gin, and people that didn't know what was happening around them. Then the poverty, the unfair poverty being dished out. I sound a bit like Gandhi, I know, but it's we're all being hoodwinked.
You can sit here and look at it as everybody should share their wealth, and then there's the socialist aspect of it, and then the capitalist of like, oh, we're going to earn everything and charge. But you see what government does with money. It's like, well, could that have been done better? Like, I understand, sometimes homeless people are homeless for mental disorders or whatever, or you get told they want to be. I'm not going to go interview everyone. But if you want to live in the wilderness, like, and whatever, that's fine. Like, that's okay. But we can't build better shelters or a hotel. We can't build better. I just had a major highway outside of Philadelphia collapse 2 weeks ago. A major artery from Boston to Washington for shipping, and an 8-lane highway. A trucker, an oil gas truck, caught under fire underneath and collapsed it. So typically in the United States, or a union run event, so a lot of union workers will get used for this. Typically, that's, hey, let's rack up the bill. What can we do here? They did come out and say that it would only take 2 weeks to repair, and they're going to fill in the bottom so it's not a passway underneath and put the highway on top. We'll see what happens. A small, tiny bridge in my town had went out. It was just a little pass through, and that was out for 16 months. I mean, maybe 1,000 cars went on a day. I think that's a high number. Maybe, I don't know. And for that to go out, now you're talking about tens of thousands of cars a day, a week. But that money can't get used for infrastructure. That money can't get used to help homeless people. That money can't help with drug addiction. We can't do anything like that. We have to do it to waste money to. Let's build a statue somewhere or something. Let's, I don't know. I think we're both in the same cynical boat. It's tough.
Yes. Yeah. No, exactly. I'm all for it.
Yeah. In the UK, is there a rampant drug problem? Is there a fentanyl issue that we face in the US here?
Well, funny enough, I only recently saw a news report in England on one of our better news channels going to America and talking about fentanyl. And I hadn't really heard of it. And I was shocked by what I saw in this report and wondered about its prevalence in this country. And I have heard it start, like everything, we usually get things just a bit after you. And I've heard it is creeping in here, which is a big concern. Obviously, it's because it's coming through the Mexican borders. So, it will go to you, and then it will start crossing the Atlantic to us, I guess. But that's a big concern. Yes, is that, and how's the government in America dealing with that? Is it very out? Is it out in the open about its effects? Is it similar to how Ronald Reagan took on drugs in the 80s, which was all a bit like an action movie? How's it being dealt with?
Oh, they're not. Zero.
Really? Oh, really? Right.
They have Kensington is a neighborhood in Philadelphia. and it's always been very poor. They call
Yeah.
it the Kensington Beach, and there are just strung out people laying all across the sidewalk. There are people in zombie mode all the time. It
Right.
looks like a wasteland. Other
Right.
major cities, downtown Philadelphia, disaster. Fentanyl all over. So the police have Narcan, and it's supposed to bring you back from fentanyl overdose. It's supposed to be pretty good, I guess. So a lot of the police officers have Narcan pens, like an EpiPen type of thing, injection to bring people back.
Right. Right.
I believe in New Jersey, regular citizens can apply to get Narcan training, so they can have it for themselves, to do it. It's a devastating. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but they said that most of the drug problem, used to be heroin was terrible, but now they're putting fentanyl in the heroin, and you're getting the double terribleness.
Again, with my cynical hat on, and tell me if I'm wrong, but what I've heard about it is it can be laced into it's been cut into anything. So I'd have thought the powers that will start taking much more action once this stuff is getting into sort of middle class drugs, and people are taking cocaine at parties, people start dying that way, then you'll see something happen.
That's what unfortunately it takes. Is disposable people to them are using it. Unworthy people to them are using it, and they're not going to do anything about it until it starts hitting that middle upper class, and then that rich class. Start doing it.
Well, and the middle class kids start taking it at school parties and stuff, and then you'll see some action being taken. Yeah,
it'll start coming across the news. So you guys gave us the Beatles. We're giving you back fentanyl. That doesn't seem like a fair trade from your side.
Doesn't that? No, it really, really doesn't. No.
Yeah, some of the great music still being played today, and we're gonna be like, hey, take our problem that we have over here. It's terrible. Yeah. So is there anything, so conspiracy theories, I was gonna bring something up about the 2020 incident, but I don't know, that slipped my mind. Is there anything, a conspiracy thread that just hangs in your mind that you haven't been able to wrap around, or that you think about, even just on occasion, that interests you?
Oh, Brian. Well, I've sort of focused on my secrets book, but my conspiracy theory book.
I just meant in life. Is there anything that, like, as you're walking around and you're doing your regular job, that like pops in your head and you're like, hey, why is that?
Well, because I wrote the book, I came to it with I'm quite a cynic. I need to be. I know some people that think the Earth's flat. I mean, whether they've taken too much of what we were just talking about, I don't know. But think that I've got a teenage daughter, and she actually mentioned chemtrails to me, which interested me. Now I look up in the sky, literally walking around, and see these trails left in the sky, and the idea is that our weather's being controlled, but it's another case against climate change and stuff like that. But that one sort of is above us all the time, because everywhere you look, there's trails from the many planes being used. And we all, during COVID, when we all locked down, we all talked about how clean the air seemed and how great the sky looked without the airline industry. So whilst I need to know more, and I'm always thinking of, there's two sides to every story, that one does interest me.
So the chemtrails, they just had a news report about a month ago, and it was a regular news station, and they were talking about, there's a company that's spraying ammonium oxide or something in the sky, and he's trying to fight climate change on his own. So this one guy was doing that, and then this news report was kind of talking about that and these other sprayers. So this independent person is going up there and spraying this, and apparently there's little the government can do. So that guy on his own is doing that.
Sorry, what's he spraying, and what does he hope will come from it?
I think it's a type of aluminum, and it'll reflect part of the sun back, and it won't have you won't get the heat from the sun coming in here, and then the other side of it is like, you're going to trap heat in.
He hasn't done it in London today.
He did it in New Jersey. We'll see. Well, the sun's coming up, but we'll see. It's supposed to rain. So in the 2008 Olympics, China had such a smog problem that they seeded their clouds to rain and washed away their smog. Yeah. So, people talking about, chemtrails. So they sprayed something in their clouds, seeded their clouds, so they have that.
It's possible. You can. Yeah.
So they talk about the contrails are a plane, or what you see of it, regular plane, and they dissipate. And then the chemtrails are that contrail that you see then spreads out to a thin white line that
Yeah.
took your bright blue sky to now it's kind of just like hazy white all the time. But there's a lot of people. Bill Gates wants to spray stuff in the sky to reflect the sun off, and it seems to be what was once a kooky, look at this crazy person looking up.
If the technology is open to us and we all know about it, then if it's beneficial, great. Changes, we have to evolve as I fear we're not evolving. That's the problem. But if it's legit and we all know about it and everything is everything's transparent, then great. I think I have slight sympathy with conspiracy people. It strikes me that if someone believes in one conspiracy, they usually believe in them all, which I have a problem with, because that means you think everything's a lie, which of course a lot of it is. But so it's a fine line, isn't it? But if we can find more transparency in public life, then I think it would benefit everyone. And it comes back to what we talked about at the beginning about politically everyone bemoaning the fact that they're the ones being, they're the ones with no backing in the word mainstream media annoys me. The mainstream media do this to us. But if we have the BBC in England, which is sort of a cherished broadcasting corporation to a lot of people, very unpopular these days and both sides think they're biased towards the other side. So that strikes me that they must be doing a really good job.
That's a good point.
Do you know what I mean? If you're annoying both halves, then you're being the independent body that you're supposed to be. So I think I've gone off on a tangent, but I think my point being, if everything's there to see, then you can make your decision and argue each side. But I worry that nothing's out in the open for us.
Right. So I love the crowdsourcing. They're getting in there. I'm just breathing these chemtrails and coughing. I love the crowdsourcing that people do, this open sourcing that you can put things on the internet and then different minds from different parts of the world can work on a problem or help solve it. It seems that I don't have the example popping in my head right now, but there's times that this has been used and, either bugs have been fixed out of a problem, like a feature, an app or something. And I think we can get to a lot better place instead of always having, so we're talking about Bill Gates has this idea. It's in legitimate newspapers and everything. He's talked about this. He wants to spray the sky and help with global warming. I haven't read his papers. Right. I don't know. Even if it sounds great, do we ever think about what's happening in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years? But like, no, hey, look, this will reduce by 1 degree and everybody will be great and we'll save climate change for 1 billion years and we'll never worry about it again. Let's go, okay, like, what are we breathing in? What is going to happen to animals that have adapted? What are going to happen to plants? We never think about that. And people just seem to rush headstrong in. And all that does is create another problem. And then, you get to call the government or whoever it might be, like, hey, I have another idea. But let's just start crowdsourcing this, keep this down the middle like the BBC. If you're pissing everybody off, you're probably telling more of the truth. If you're pissing one side off, maybe you're skewing a little too hard to the other side. Yeah,
I think the key is to piss everyone off, Brian. That's you're doing something right. If everyone listening to this is slightly pissed off, I'll be happy.
Yeah. We've been agreeing too much and having too much fun. Been a lot of smiles here. I have to work better.
Oh, right. Are these podcasts usually a bit feisty?
No, you know what? I've only had one where I asked a very, I try to come from it from like an everyman perspective. Like, hey, whatever you want to talk about, for the most part, come tell me whatever you're working on, whatever you're interested in. And a question comes on my mind. I asked it very respectfully. I even tiptoed with like, please take this the right way. But hey, I hear your idea, but there's also this very simple control group, and we don't see that. And the person did not respond that well to it. But everyone else seems to get my jokes or get that like we're here for a good time. But hey, well, so far so good.
I tell you one of these sequels that sprung to mind. And talking of control groups, is the entitled "What Don't We Know About Coca-Cola?" Now, the company Coca-Cola strikes me as the most American thing that any of us Brits can think of. Probably,
I think it's pretty American.
Asking you a question: what people think of the company in terms of climate change, its environmental issues, the idea that people in Asia have been poisoned by factories owned by Coca-Cola, and that this thing that is so wholesome in the way it's advertised is dark. And listen, we can talk about a lot of multinationals, you know, Nike and Adidas, and the way they employ people to make their products, and sweatshops and stuff. It's the big companies that we rely on every day and have dominated our lives. What's murky under the surface there? And you know, I wonder what people think about Coca-Cola in America.
I would say that for the most part, if you asked anybody on the history of Coca-Cola or the dark side, they would bring up that it originally had cocaine in it.
Well,
and then after
that's probably one of the least nasty things they've
yeah. And then after, you know, and then the people who, you know, I grew up drinking soda and now I don't do it. And if you pour soda on a car, you'll see the paint come off. And it's like, what's that
for
doing?
health reasons? Yeah, for health reasons rather than for health reasons rather than ethical, maybe.
Oh, zero ethical. Yeah. I don't think I'd be able to live my life if I start thinking about the ethical impacts of everything that I do.
Well,
you know, my iPhone being mined and an African mined by some child. You really have to block.
The batteries we all use, you know, that going, you know, that's going to be the new sort of big issue, I think. You know,
Amazon has suicide nets up in some of their factories that the people can't jump off of the roof and it'll catch them and they put them back to work. Like, what is going on here? And one just quit the job. Like, an option's to quit. You can just walk out. Maybe in some countries you can't. I don't know. But yeah, I had no idea about the poisoning. But hey, you get into corporations and, you know, they don't do anything the right way until the government makes them to.
Yeah, fascinating. And of course the government don't, because there's subsidies to be made. And yeah, it's the lobbying goes on. And so it comes back to being very cynical, but we're caught in a slight trap, you know.
Yeah, you'll see some of the companies. You really have to get down. It's tough. You know, I'm trying to think of the actress. She has this company called The Honest Company, and it's baby products. I think Jessica Alba, and it's supposed to be all these all natural products and everything, and, you know, feel good about yourself as you're using it. But if you start looking into manufacturing, like, everything produced will produce waste. Everything will have a leak. Like, wherever these things are being made, you know, you're poisoning the area around it. Unfortunately, like, there's not a clean production company.
Yeah,
you know, a manufacturing company. Like, you can't make.
You
can't leak oil. They're going to, you know, you're bringing in a truck that's going to spill gasoline. You're going to pollute the land, you know, somewhere.
Yeah, I love that it's called honest. I mean, that's the epitome of the marketing that has to be made. Yeah, honest, and all this. And, you know, and it all comes to the marketing and the way the product is packaged, and you can be as fancy as you like, but you're right. Everyone's a hypocrite because it leads back to some, unless we all start farming our own land and living within a mile radius of ourselves, the human race can't pretend to be honest.
Right. Yeah. And there's ways you could clean up your mess as you're doing it, you know, to make it so you can still travel and do things. But to sit here and say, oh, my manufacturing company, we're honest. We produce, you know, I don't know if she says there's zero waste, so I shouldn't say that, but she should try and say hers is an ethical company. And, you know, maybe it is, or at least in whatever board meeting she is, it is.
I think, Brian, many people argue that the whole recycling thing that we do, quite rightly do, by the way, but it's quite a myth that we're making a fingernail's much of difference. And it's only until governments start changing their policies on fossil fuels and everything that we're just pissing into the dark, really.
He's a young man now in his 20s. His name is Boyan Slat, Slat, and he's trying to clean up all this pollution in rivers and the Great Pacific Garbage Patch off of California. It's the size of Texas, which is you know, really, really big. So he was going into Asian countries that have these, like, you know, polluted rivers, and he created this whole system that can just gather up the plastic and fish can get through and all these things. And it seems amazing. And he's going to clean up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch in 20 years. This thing, never be cleaned up ever. It's going to keep getting bigger. And this guy's like, no, I can do this in 20 years. He doesn't get, I mean, I'm sure he probably gets government grants, because where's a 20-year-old kid he has 3 or 4 or 5 of these ships going out there. But you would think that somebody has a good idea. Let's put our money behind it. Let's do this. Let's actually clean up something. But then somebody else wants to come on, like SpaceX and the Jeff Bezos one, you know, fly into space. We're talking about the submarine.
Yeah.
William Shatner, Jeff Bezos go up there for 15 seconds and come back down.
Yeah.
Do you need competing companies? Does Richard Branson, the Virgin X one, if you put all your money together?
capitalism.
Yeah.
You have to compete.
I feel like we both came off as super socialist here. I'm going to get, they're going to vote me out of this country.
Power to the people.
Yeah.
America, rise up, America. Rise up.
Yeah. Take it back. Take it back. You can
gonna
have your own
I'm gonna
individual wealth and this, all that we pay so much in taxes, like help people out, do something
I'm
that's
gonna
important.
have the CIA. I'm gonna have the CIA following me. I can tell.
Oh man, they're already here. I was talking to somebody on Monday night. I had an interview, and he's an engineer, a mechanical engineer for 30 years, and he was talking about the World Trade Center complex. Building number 7 fell down at a free fall speed, so not the 1 or 2, the big towers. This free fall speed, nothing stops it. And he's like, oh, and that doesn't happen in engineering. Like if a floor collapsed, you would lose energy and it would just slow down. Not that it couldn't collapse, but in his experience and looking at, so okay, great. And I was asking him the name of this group, and I was like, oh, okay, this group has a lawsuit. What's the name of the group? It took 3 times for him to say it because Zoom kept cutting out as I was saying it. I was like, hey, the powers that be are on here. CIA's listening. They're cutting this out. We haven't lost our connection once. We're not saying anything interesting. We need to step this up.
Yeah.
So, Leo, what are you working on now? You covered sports?
I am covering, my day job is a lot of sport. I mean, I used to be a sports writer. I'm just a writer now. So we're
is that a promotion or demotion? You went from sports writer to just a writer now.
Yeah, it flows off the tongue easier.
Yeah.
I am doing some very interesting football articles at the moment, soccer articles, sorry. But also Sam and I are just about to start another couple of these in this series of books, this time looking at true crimes. So we're doing a book about female serial killers.
Oh, great.
It's quite macabre and fascinating in equal measure. And doctors that kill. So two books on true crime cases, which seem to catch people's imagination a lot. Last year I did one the year before last I did one generally on serial killers, and now we're doing female serial killers.
Serial killers, not every woman I talk to, but a lot of women love this serial killer, and they cannot get enough. Yeah,
they really do. They really do, and it's such a big. I mean, half of Netflix is based on serial killers, I think.
Yeah, I have people in my life who watch all of it, and then I'm like, who are you? And like, should I, hard enough to figure out the female mind, and it's like, what is really happening there?
So to delve deep into to women that actually have done it, which is obviously much rarer than men, and for quite fascinating reasons, actually, women there's usually kind of maybe deeper reasons involved, but we're only just starting. So I promise to come on and tell you all about it once we're done.
Awesome. I'm going to hold you that promise. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, great. Thank you. Where can people find yourself? And do you mind plugging Sam? Where can people find Sam?
Sam Pilger. Well, you mean these books?
Yeah, or just where can people follow you? Where can people pick these books up in Amazon? I saw it in Barnes and Noble.
Funny enough, I don't think they're that prevalent online. I think the company, I know Barnes and Noble, your great big bookshop, has stocked some. I've been over there and seen them very well stocked there. You'll find them. The Secrets book we've been talking about is it's called Unsolved series, and then we have true crime case books, which are things like serial killers. And Sam did a great book on murderers, a bit, a more sort of. The distinction between serial killers and murderers is one we talk about, and so you'll find them in great American bookshops. Our other stuff, Sam has a very big Twitter following at Sam Pilger. Me less so.
We'll get you up there. Don't worry, we'll get you up there.
No, it's not. Yeah, I'm not on it enough, which I should be. My publishers often have a go at me for not being proactive enough. But there you go. So yes, you'll find us online, and Leo Moynihan and Sam Pilger. Our work is often online, and you'll find these books in American bookshops, and I hope people enjoy them.
Perfect. I'll put a link in the show notes for your socials that you're going to start using, so it'll be fine. I'll put the links for the socials and then Barnes and Noble.
If my numbers go up by 10, I promise to be more entertaining on Twitter.
Okay, we'll see what we can do for you.
I'll break a secret a day.
Okay, hey, there you go. every new 10 followers, every 100 or something, you'll have a new secret. You have to set these thresholds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If the CIA are listening, they better watch out. It's all going to break.
Uh-oh. All right, CIA. Leo's coming for you. Watch out. I sincerely appreciate your time. Thank you so
Brian,
much.
it's been a pleasure. Real pleasure. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you so much.
Definitely. You take
care. Enjoy the rest of your
Bye.
day. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. That was our show. Don't forget to leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast. Like and follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date in all things wild and weird. Check out the links in the show notes for more information on our guest. The biggest support you can offer is to tell everyone about the podcast. Until next time.